You are not going to believe this.
What's happened?
The Vatican. They've just done something most people thought was, well, basically impossible.
Okay.
They've elected an American pope, Leo the 14th. He was Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost of Chicago.
Wow, an American pope. Seriously.
Seriously. So, okay, let's unpack this right away. This is a truly seismic event, and we're just starting to see the shockwaves, really.
Absolutely.
So this deep dive, it's for you to help you understand why this is such a monumental thing, what it could mean for the church, for the world,
Yeah.
and some of the, frankly, fascinating details already coming out. We'll look at the immediate reactions and dig into his background, see what that tells us.
And we've got some good sources lined up for this.
We do. A really compelling set, actually. Articles from The Atlantic, The New York Post, Rolling Stone, Washington Post, The Irish Times, New York Times, The Guardian, and The New Republic. So a good mix.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because the first thing that hits me is just how unexpected this is. For
Mhm.
so long, the conventional wisdom in the Vatican was an American pope, not happening.
Right.
Especially with the U.S. being, well, the dominant superpower.
Mhm.
The idea was having an American leading the world's biggest religion. It would just kind of throw off the whole geopolitical balance.
Exactly. That was always the argument, wasn't
Yeah.
it? And yet, here we are, May 8th, 2025.
hmm
Robert Francis Prevost, Pope Leo the 14th,
The first ever?
first American pope in history. And get this, he was picked on just the second day of voting.
That's fast for a conclave.
It is, and by what everyone's calling the most geographically diverse group of cardinals ever.
That's significant in itself.
And, adding another layer to this whole thing, it happened during Donald Trump's presidency, which injects a pretty interesting geopolitical angle right from the start.
Yeah, that timing is something. You take that diverse group of cardinals, making a decision that quickly against the backdrop of, let's say, a tense international scene under Trump. It does make you wonder. It suggests maybe a real consensus, or at least like a strong push to move past those old reservations about an American pope. It feels deliberate.
So who is this new Pope Leo the 14th? Okay, born in Chicago, still has the accent apparently. He went to Villanova University American School, but here's where it gets interesting. He spent most of his adult life outside the U.S.
Right, that's key.
He was a missionary bishop down in Peru for years, and then he actually led the Augustinian religious order, but from Rome.
Okay, so not your typical American cleric profile then.
Not at all. We understand he's fluent in Italian, fluent in Spanish, even used them in his first speech.
Yeah, that experience abroad, especially Latin America, that really sets him apart. He's known inside the Vatican, apparently, as an internationalist, someone who really gets the global picture. That could, shift things away from the old Eurocentric view. It positions him quite differently.
And there's more. He actually has dual citizenship, U.S. and Peruvian.
Oh, interesting. That could be helpful, especially in Latin America.
Could be. And inside the Vatican, besides being an internationalist, he's also got a reputation for a, quote, sharp management style.
Okay, so experienced administrator, too.
Seems like it. Now, back to why this was so unexpected. It really is that old idea, isn't it? The U.S. superpower status being a barrier.
Yeah, the fear of imbalance. And for centuries, the papacy has been overwhelmingly European.
So does this signal maybe a shift, a sort of relinquishing of that traditional European hold on papal authority?
That's a huge question. For many, especially in Europe, the Pope is tied to their history, their culture. An American Pope, right after the first Latin American one.
Yeah.
It could feel like a real change in the center of gravity.
The initial reactions seemed to bear that out. Lots of, stunned silence reported. Vatican City around the world, just shock.
I can imagine.
Some are already calling it a geopolitical response, like a deliberate move given the current global tensions.
A statement, perhaps?
And for Catholics in the U.S., you've got to think this feels huge, like confirmation. Catholicism as a truly American religion, finally validated on the highest level.
Oh, absolutely. That sense of we belong, we're central now. That must be incredibly powerful for American Catholics. It could really change their engagement, maybe even how the U.S. church is seen globally.
Okay, so let's really get into the sources now. What are they telling us about who Pope Leo the 14th is, what he might do? One of the first things that jumped out, his social media.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The X account. At Drip Provost.
Verified account. And it turns out he has quite a history of retweeting stuff that's pretty critical of Donald Trump's policies. especially on immigration.
Right. This is where we get maybe the clearest glimpse into his personal leanings on certain issues, because it was public record.
His last post before the conclave, apparently, was retweeting criticism of a Trump deal with El Salvador on deportations. That was April 14th.
Wow. That close to the election. It suggests those views are pretty strongly held. Consistent criticism of the previous administration on immigration. It points towards, alignment with certain social justice principles in Catholic teaching.
Definitely not isolated. Back in February this year, he shared a National Catholic Reporter article. It directly went after J.D. Vance's argument about prioritizing love for family and neighbors over foreigners.
I saw that one. The headline was something like, J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others.
Pretty direct.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it frames it theologically, doesn't it? It's not just politics. It's about interpreting Christian teaching, that whole idea of ordo amoris, the order of love. He's challenging Vance on that level.
Going back further, Trump's first term, more activity. 2017, he retweets Chicago Archbishop Blase Hupich, calling the refugee ban a dark hour of U.S. history.
Okay.
Same year, he shares Jesuit priest James Martin condemning the Syrian refugee ban. Martin wrote, "What an immoral nation we are becoming. Jesus weeps."
Strong word.
And also in 2017, he retweeted criticism of Trump's bad hombres comment, saying it fueled racism and nativism.
So a very consistent pattern emerges there. Deep concern about social justice, immigrants, refugees, a clear disagreement with that kind of nationalist rhetoric.
And it wasn't just immigration. Also in 2017, after the Las Vegas shooting, he retweeted Senator Chris Murphy calling for gun control, retweeted the U.S. bishops condemning hatred after Charlottesville that same year. Then in 2020, prayers for George Floyd and a call for the church itself to reject racism.
Right.
He even retweeted an anti-capitalist cartoon from 2013 with Pope Francis criticizing greed and endorsed the Catholic climate petition in 2015.
So it's a broad range: economic inequality, racial justice, environment. It really suggests someone engaged with, the big social challenges, leaning towards solutions grounded in that Catholic social teaching tradition.
But, and this is important, it wasn't all political in that sense. His account also touched on core Catholic positions.
Okay, like what?
Like an anti-abortion meme that just said adoption. He shared a link, though apparently the link was broken later, criticizing the HHS mandate on contraceptives.
The contraception mandate, right. A big issue for the U.S. Church.
Exactly. He also shared calls for ending the death penalty and circulated a post condemning gender ideology in schools.
Okay, so that complicates the picture, doesn't it? While the retweets often lean progressive politically on these core doctrinal issues, life, family, sexuality, he sounds much more traditionally aligned.
Exactly. So maybe not easy to just label him left-wing.
No, definitely not. It suggests a more complex profile.
Okay, let's talk about the name he chose. Leo XIV. The sources are saying this is probably a big signal.
Yeah, widely seen as nodding towards modern Catholic social teaching. That tradition really kicked off by Leo XIII back in the late 19th, early 20th century.
Leo III. Rerum Novarum, right. The encyclical about labor conditions.
Exactly. Foundational stuff for Catholic social thought. Addressed the terrible conditions workers faced, laid out principles of social justice, workers' rights. He was called the Pope of the Workers.
So Leo XIV picks that name. It feels like he's saying, I'm carrying that forward. A focus on human dignity, social justice for today.
That seems like the most obvious reading, yeah. But interestingly, some conservative Catholics are apparently interpreting it differently.
How so?
They see it as referencing the Pope Leos throughout history, who were known for standing firm against what they call moral relativism.
So the name itself is already being pulled in different directions.
Pretty much reflects the tensions within the church, doesn't it? Progressives hoping for social justice continuity, conservatives maybe hoping for a stronger line on traditional morals.
Speaking of continuity, what about Pope Francis? How much might Leo XIV follow his path? Sources suggest maybe quite a bit, especially on migrants, the environment, areas where Francis often clashed with the last U.S. administration.
Well, the connection is definitely there. Remember, Leo XIV was Francis's top advisor for picking bishops for the last 2 years of his papacy.
Right, that's a close working relationship.
It strongly suggests, a shared vision on the kind of leadership needed in the church. You don't put someone in that role unless you're broadly aligned.
But there's this 2012 speech before he was even a bishop when he led the Augustinians.
What did he say?
He criticized Western mass media for promoting things at odds with the gospel. He specifically mentioned euthanasia, abortion, the homosexual lifestyle, and gay adoption.
Hmm. That does sound different in tone from Francetta's, who am I to judge comment.
Quite different. It throws a bit of a curveball, doesn't it? Alignment on bishops, maybe, but potentially a more traditional stance himself on some of these hot-button social issues.
It certainly introduces some uncertainty. His views on women deacons are also apparently skeptical, based on things he said before. It suggests maybe not a complete continuation of Francis's tone or emphasis in every area.
And apparently, while he backed Francis allowing communion for divorced and remarried Catholics, he was, let's say, less keen on the idea of blessing same-sex couples.
Okay, so it's a nuanced picture, carrying forward some priorities perhaps, but maybe with a more conservative filter on certain moral or doctrinal questions.
Seems like it. Not just a carbon copy of Francis, but not a complete rejection either. He sort of embodies those internal church tensions himself.
That's a good way to put it.
So what about the U.S.? How is this playing out stateside? Sources seem to agree U.S. Catholics are likely thrilled, feeling validated.
Oh, for sure. A huge moment for them. But the key thing to watch will be his relationship with the U.S. bishops.
Why specifically?
Well, many U.S. bishops really prioritized abortion as the, quote, preeminent priority. Right. Francis tried to broaden that, give equal weight to other social issues like poverty, immigration. Leo's past statements, especially that 2012 speech and the HHS mandate thing, they might suggest he's potentially more aligned with the bishop's focus on those specific life and family issues.
We're already seeing split reactions, aren't we? Some conservatives reportedly alarmed, worried about a left-wing pope clashing with, national populism, given his Trump criticisms.
Yeah, those ex-posts clearly caused some jitters.
But then others, like Ashley McGuire from the Catholic Association, were expressing joy, hoping he continues Francis's style of evangelical outreach.
It just highlights the divides, doesn't it? His past tweets worry some, his social justice focus encourages others, his first moves, his appointments. They'll be watched like a hawk by everyone in the U.S. church.
Even the official reactions. President Trump congratulated him, called it a great honor for our country.
Diplomatic, as you'd expect.
Vice President J.D. Vance also offered congratulations and prayers, despite, the Pope having a shared criticism of him earlier.
Right. Official statements are one thing. How things actually play out will be another.
And initial comments from U.S. church leaders like Cardinal O'Malley in Boston seem to signal support, wanting to continue Francis's priorities.
Again, early days. We'll see how those relationships develop once concrete decisions start being made.
Okay, need to think globally, too. The global South Africa, Asia, Latin America, that's where the church is growing fastest. But some countries there are, let's say, skeptical of the U.S. How will an American pope go down there?
That is a massive question. His Peruvian citizenship, as we said, that could be a real bridge in Latin America. Some are already calling him an adopted son.
That helps.
It does. But the broader history, the political, economic dynamics between the U.S. and many parts of the global South, that could still be a challenge. Navigating those perceptions will be crucial.
Okay, last area, just some personal details that have surfaced. He's the first pope from the Augustinian order.
Right. Adds another historical first.
Spent all that time in Peru, judicial vicar, professor, eventually bishop, known there for having a good sense of humor and being able to kind of mediate between different factions.
Useful skills for a pope.
You'd think so. His own family background is pretty international, too. Father had French and Italian roots, mother Spanish, got 2 brothers.
We mentioned Villanova. He also studied canon law in Rome, speaks English, Spanish, Italian, French, and Portuguese.
Wow, multilingual. That's definitely an asset.
Public records show he voted back in Illinois sometimes, even in Republican primaries.
Oh, that adds another layer to the political assumption.
Doesn't it? And a genealogist in New Orleans claims he has Creole roots. And the really big one for Chicago.
Go on.
His brother had to clarify he was always a White Sox fan. Wrigley Field apparently claimed him as a Cubs fan initially.
Huh. Gotta get the baseball allegiance right. It all paints a more, human picture, though. The pastoral work, the languages, mediating skills.
Yeah.
Even the Sox fandom.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Summing up our deep dive. The election of Pope Leo XIV. Clearly historic, game-changing, potentially.
Absolutely.
His American identity shatters that old Vatican taboo based on geopolitics. His past social media, especially the X account, points strongly towards criticism of the previous U.S. administration, maybe continuity with Francis on things like immigration, poverty.
But those earlier comments, the 2012 speech, the stances on abortion, gender issues, maybe suggest a different emphasis there. More traditional, perhaps.
And the name, Leo XIV, signals the focus on social teaching. But even that's being interpreted in different ways.
Right. So the exact direction, still very much up in the air. It'll depend on how he interacts with the U.S. church, the global church, how he balances all these different facets of his own background and views.
Which leads us to maybe a final thought, something for you, the listener, to mull over.
Yeah.
With the first American now leading this truly global church,
Yeah.
how is that relationship between the United States and the Catholic world going to change? What sort of unexpected shifts, culturally, politically, might we actually see because of this moment? Well, it's unprecedented.
It really is. A question that's going to hang over things for years to come.